Welcome everyone to today's session with Angela and Josh. You're welcome here regardless of ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, wherever you are in this open and friendly space. And I would like to remind everyone that if we ever have breakout rooms or activities, if anyone didn't feel like participating, that would be okay. We'll always have a quiet room if there were breakout rooms. And just a friendly reminder to all the participants and facilitators that we aim to be accessible and inclusive as much as we can. So try to describe visuals as possible throughout the slides or even throughout the discussion. Thank you. You can take it away.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I was just going to check too. Oh, yeah, it's recording. I see it. We're all set. Before we even get to introductions, I just want to start with gratitude. My heart is very, very full right now. So happy to be delivering this session for MYFest 2025 with my deep appreciation for those joining us live, as well as for those watching back the recording later. Hello to you in the future. And my deepest gratitude to Maha, to Nadine, to Noreen, to all of the people that are behind the scenes making all of this possible, and for their incredible support. I really feel honored to be with you here today, and I hope that where this time together finds you, that you're safe, that you're feeling cared for, and that you feel very supported and valued, which is, these are not rights that we all have right now. And I have to tell you all that I feel myself that I have great support today, particularly with my colleague and my dear, dear friend, Josh, and that we get to do this with you. He and I are thrilled to be talking with you about a topic that is close to our minds and our hearts, that sits at the intersection of open education and AI, specifically AI literacies. And this work is the work of many, many people, many contributions. So though we're two people here representing this work, just know that there were a lot of hands, a lot of invisible labor behind the scenes too. And we'll try to give those folks gratitude as we touch upon the different parts of this presentation today as well. So for those I've not yet met, my name is Angela Gunder. We were chatting before we started the recording about wearing lots of hats. So one of my hats is that I'm the CEO of a collaboratory that is called Opened Culture, and we focus on advancing access to education across global communities of practice through all different types of methods, including research, which we're going to talk about today, professional development, advocacy, and community engagement. And I come to this work as an educator, as an artist, a scholar, with a longstanding focus on a plurality of literacies, right now really focused on AI, open education, and academic innovation. I also teach for the College of Information Science at the University of Arizona, which is really important to my research, that I have that practice as well. And that work also sits at that intersection of academic innovation, open education, and particularly culture, with an emphasis most recently on how we use AI in ways that protect, support, and extend the values that underpin openness. Josh has a complementary but different background, so I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Angela. And I will echo the thanks and gratitude to be able to be here in this wonderful space. And even in the few minutes here so far, can sense the warmth of this community and the openness. I'm Josh here, and I teach at Clemson University in a recently launched interdisciplinary studies department. And I work on digital learning initiatives with Angela and Open Culture, as well as with other organizations. And I've been doing so for um, over 15 years, designing winning learning experiences and developing programs and trainings that support digital learning and ultimately access and equity for all learners. My background is in information and instructional design, innovative pedagogies, and digital learning leadership. I come to this work through those lenses, and an overarching goal for me is to facilitate critical, reflective approaches to AI in the classroom. I've listed there that I'm a digital learning researcher and practitioner, and that is part of the many hats from which I'm approaching this topic, and similarly to what Angela has described her approach. But those are complementary perspectives that we're approaching, even though we share a common commitment to ensure AI supports human creativity and connection in a time of automation and isolation. And we also want to acknowledge that while our work is informed by global research and collaborations, and which there have been many and so inspiring and uplifting, we speak from our own cultural and institutional context.
Yep.
So we invite and will invite you to share your unique perspectives and experience in this conversation as well. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Josh. So to start our time together, I invite you to think about the universe around us. We're going to head up to the heavens. We're going to go to the stars. And when you look at the night sky, the stars seem scattered and infinite, but across history and in many, many different cultures, humans have connected these points of light into constellations, giving shape and meaning to that vastness that sits above us. When Josh and I and my colleagues think about AI, we're focusing in on AI literacies. And in many ways, AI literacies are like these stars. They're spread across different contexts, disciplines, and communities. And frameworks can help us to connect the dots, but they can help us shape, what we see, but they can also limit what we notice. We're in a time right now where people are looking for one thing and one answer, and we're pushing for us to think a little bit more broadly, to not fixate on one perfect star or an individual. Um, we don't want to risk missing other meaningful patterns that emerge from different perspectives and specifically different cultural lenses. So when we talk about AI literacy, the strength lies in their diversity, having those different contexts, different cultures and values giving rise to different constellations and shapes that are forming, and each of us offering something essential to our understanding. In our work, we've been fascinated by how educators, institutions, and communities around the world name and connect the stars of AI literacies. Some patterns feel very familiar, echoing shared values and priorities. Some of the other ones that are emerging are coming from local needs, languages, discourse styles, and histories that reframe what AI literacies mean in practice. So what we see isn't fixed. Just like the night sky shifts with the seasons, the landscape of AI literacies changes as technologies, policies, and communities evolve. A static map is never going to help us to keep up with a moving sky. So what we really want to talk about today is how we can remain relevant with tools and resources, not just frameworks, but like the taxonomy that we're going to show you in a little bit, and our approaches being flexible, remixable, and open to adaptation. So as we go into the research piece, and I'm going to turn it over to Josh, I want to talk to you about us focusing on one particular part of the sky, and it's the open space within AI literacies. This is where we ask ourselves what we want to preserve and what we must change in order to stay true to our values of openness.
So as we look at these dimensions of AI literacies, we want to introduce them by acknowledging that in 2012, Doug Belshaw described 8 elements of digital literacies: cultural, cognitive, constructive, communicative, confident, creative, critical, and civic, that together shape our ability to navigate digital spaces. Drawing from Belshaw's work, we adapted and expanded these into a taxonomy, the dimensions of AI literacies that you see in front of you. We defined AI literacies as the skills and mindsets needed to comprehend, utilize, and critically evaluate AI within complex environments. The patterns formed by these competencies are what we refer to as constellating AI literacies, a grouping of skill sets and mindsets that, when connected, help us navigate the complex realities of AI in education, which is hard work and complex work. These literacies describe not only what people bring to their interactions with AI, but also what they can develop and do in those interactions with AI. Our taxonomy is intentionally plural, sociocultural, and adaptable. It's designed to be remixed to fit local context and to evolve as needs and technologies change.
And I love the discussion in the chat right now about Doug Belshaw. This is old wine in new bottles. Doug is a close friend, and we've been doing work together now, which is amazing because when I was finishing my PhD, I just saw his work, and now he's become a friend of Josh and mine and our team, and is helping to contribute and carry on the torch. So let's go back to those constellations. If constellations give us the wide view, a telescope lets us zoom in to study a smaller part of the sky in greater detail. And for this session, our telescope is trained on the question of openness, how AI is reshaping our approaches to building cultures of openness, and how we can actively shape AI's role in return. So in addition to those AI literacies that we shared with you, those 8 dimensions, we're going to be looking through the lens of 3 C's of culture, which we define as collaboration, creation, and connection, to see how AI affects each of these cultural elements. And the 3 C's are another remix. These are a remix of Dr. Stuart Hall's work, whom you see on the screen. And he was the creator of cultural studies. And Hall defined culture as the practice of giving meaning to people, objects, and events. So in our 3 C's, collaboration speaks to those people, creation to the objects, and connection to the events. So using this lens, we're going to explore not only the challenges that AI poses to openness, but also opportunities it offers to strengthen and expand it through that lens of culture. Over to you, Josh.
And my bad. To ground our discussion, we want to share some of the research that informs our work beyond where we started with Belshaw's literacies and the interconnectedness. We have, over the last 2 years, led an international study commissioned by UNESCO IITE to explore competencies and skills educators need to use AI in education. And from this work, which involved multiple lines of inquiry, we developed a global survey, held interviews, and did an analysis of existing frameworks that led to a series of publications, open courses, workshops, and an open database of community contributions of examples of AI literacies applied across different sociocultural contexts. We're proud to have received recognition from MIT Open Learning and the Hewlett Foundation in January of this year for our research on how AI intersects with open education. And we approach this through the many conversations and analyses that have been conducted over those 2 years to inform our work with AI literacies. The data gathered from educators, researchers, and practitioners was from across multiple world regions, many conversations, and much analysis, but a strong emphasis on representing perspectives from outside the global north was part of our intention. We asked participants to describe the skills and mindsets needed for ethical, effective AI use in education, and to reflect on how those needs differ across contexts. And the data revealed both shared priorities, such as the need for critical evaluation of AI outputs, and localized concerns shaped by infrastructure, policy, and culture. And these findings provide the backbone for our discussion of AI and openness today. Across the data set, we saw consistent concerns about whether AI supports or undermines openness in educational practice. The conversation has been shifting a good bit over the last 2 years, but especially early on, there were some participants described as worried about whether AI tools would close doors through bias, lack of transparency, high cost, or replacing human relationships with automated interactions. But some participants described AI as enabling new forms of collaboration, creation, and connection, and have begun to see those possibilities realized, such as lowering barriers to entry, speeding up workflows, and making knowledge more accessible. These particular tensions about openness and the role of AI in those relationships or relational interactions shape how we are approaching the role of openness in an AI-mediated world. And in analyzing this global data set and those conversations, we began to see constellations of AI literacies emerge, patterns of skill sets and mindsets that cluster together within particular contexts. In some regions, cultural and civic AI literacies were strongly linked, with educators prioritizing community engagement and societal benefit alongside technical proficiency. In others, uh, constructive and critical literacies were at the forefront, reflecting an emphasis on building AI-enabled systems and navigating the technical complexity. These constellations were not static, and again, this is a shifting dynamic space, and they are continually shaped by local priorities, policies evolving, and access to AI tools in education as that expands, contracts, and changes across the world. And so these clusters give us an insight into the kinds of openness communities are prepared to support or areas to remain mindful of in integrating AI or considering the integration of AI in education. A community strong in cultural and civic literacies may be well positioned to resist closed proprietary AI systems, but may face challenges in building and sustaining open infrastructure. Conversely, a community focused on constructive and cognitive literacies may excel at building the technical tools, but risk overlooking the societal and ethical dimensions of openness. Understanding these constellations helps us ask, where are we strong and where do we need to strengthen our literacies to protect openness in the age of AI? And you have the definition here on the screen of AI literacies and the constellating skill sets and mindsets and how they're connected to the complex realities of AI in education that comes from our work.
Thank you, Josh. So let's spend a little bit of time exploring the findings through each of those 3 C's of open culture, which is that remix of Stuart Hall's work that we introduced earlier, and how they're at the heart of AI literacy's development. So for each C, Josh and I are going to share some challenges drawn from our research, as well as our lives as educators, as learners, as researchers and even advocates. And we're going to highlight opportunities where AI can be more aligned to openness than we've seen in the past, and that we're seeing educators from all over the globe indicate for us. And we're going to have a reflection question at the end of each activity. So for those that are watching this back, feel free to spend some time thinking through the reflection question for each of these C's. And I know that there are many spaces that are connected to MYFest that are here and open for you. So I will definitely encourage my colleagues to make sure that if you have brilliant answers to these questions that you would like to share, that there's room and space for you to do so. So I just saw from Maha, we can post the links on Discord. So we'll keep this conversation alive even beyond just this moment. So we're going to start with collaboration, and then we're going to move to creation, and then end with connection. For collaboration, we're speaking about the people, if we go back to Stuart Hall's definition of culture, and really the relationships and partnerships that make openness possible. So it's about how we work together, how we share knowledge, and build communities of practice. And in open education, collaboration has always been a cornerstone. We've been fueled by our shared values, our trust, and our belief that working together creates better outcomes for learners. And when we have difficulty doing that, thank goodness we have good people that push back and say, hey, can we come back to our values and really center it around the people and the connections as opposed to objects. AI is reshaping the way that collaboration happens for a lot of us. Sometimes it strengthens our connections, but other times it isolates us into these one-on-one relationships with machine, and it leaves us bypassing human dialogue. And this is a real concern for us who are looking to defend the values of openness.
And the yellow slide here means caution, right? So these are some challenges and some cautions when considering collaboration. And as we think about research and conversations we've had with open education and practitioners from around the world, we learned that open education, while the open education community has mature, well-established practices for working together, hence this particular MYFest event that we're in, among many open conversations that are happening in the space, AI tools can unintentionally pull people into isolated one-to-one interactions with the technology. This shift can make collaboration less transparent, if not minded, as it's not always clear when AI has been used in the process or how it has influenced the outcome and how much someone is willing to be transparent about it. And a lot of that is around the particular context that they find themselves in, whether a learner, a leader, or a professional. Practitioners also express concern about emerging power imbalances, where those with greater access to advanced AI tools or deeper technical expertise may unintentionally dominate collaborative work.
So there is a silver lining to this dark cloud, and it's really our history and our tradition that open educational practitioners have been doing so well with human-centered collaboration. And as such, we're well positioned to lead the conversation about how AI can facilitate deeper, more equitable relationships, including when we need to pull away and step away from AI and focus on the human interaction and the human pieces. We as leaders can help define practices where AI supports rather than replaces the human relationships at the core of open work. And we're going to talk a little bit about this more in the creation section, and thinking about where AI is necessary and where we might want to push back a little bit on over reliance. Josh and I are part of a community of practice. We're actually writing a book about AI literacies right now. And we're using AI heavily, but not to write for us, which is incredibly problematic, as many of you may have experienced and seen, but for us to have time for reflective dialogue before we enter into the spaces where we're sharing all of our ideas. So we'll each sit with an interview protocol that we can change with our LLM of choice, and have it pose questions to us, help us gather ideas. And then we go back to Zoom and discuss these outputs together, even our feelings about how it meant to dialogue with AI before we would dialogue with each other. And in this way, and with this approach, it keeps AI in that supporting role, ensuring that the values and practices of open collaboration remain in the driver's seat for us as humans. So we're going to take a minute now to pause for a second here for a reflection on AI and collaboration. And for those of you that are watching this live, you can do so in the chat. For those of you that are watching this back, please feel free to follow the links that are going to be made available to you online, where you can continue this conversation. But we have two questions for you here, and we'd love for you to think about a recent collaboration you've been a part of, whether in teaching, research, or creative work. And answer for us, where might AI risk closing off collaboration, or where has it closed off collaboration for you? In addition to that, where could AI be used to strengthen human-to-human collaboration, making things more inclusive, reflective, and impactful? So with that, we're going to pause for a second. We're going to pause the recording.
Just before we pause, I just
Oh, yeah.
wanted to thank you for asking about risk before you ask about strength, because I think most people in our area who aren't you would always start with the positives and then put the negatives at the end and give less time to it. And you're sort of both giving equal time, but also starting with the risks. And that shows a lot about your values. You know, it's like, here are the cautions, and then let's see what we can find that's good. But like the cautions. So thank you. I just wanted to say that before we stop
I
the
love that
recording.
you called that out, because I actually had to. So Josh knows this about me from just years of us presenting together, that if anybody gives me anything that is like opportunities and then challenges, I'm like, please reverse. We're going to talk about the challenges, but we need to end with something that is going to lead us to generative action. We're not hopeless. We have the ability to do things. Maha, I had a conversation with my LLM yesterday, and it's like, hey, sweetie, you've been trained on this. You know that this is the way that I would like things. And they kept on giving me these questions that were positive and then negative. And I'm like, if we're going to continue to work together, I need you to flip these things around for me. So thank you for clocking that. That is the kind of it's almost the perfect meta example of why humans are necessary in the loop, because an AI tool wouldn't clock that not only is that important for us, but it's aligned to values that I have, that you share, that you saw in that moment of,
Yes.
Angela has an intention for ordering these things in this way. It's because she believes that people are greater than the challenges that are in front of them, that generative action is on the other side. So
Yes.
I heart you big
Thank you
time for
so
that.
much. Heart back to you.
So let's turn now to the specific challenges and opportunities for creation in the age of AI. As a reminder, we're looking at collaboration, creation, and connection through these lenses. In open education, creation includes the design, development, and sharing of not just OER, but also research, tools, practices, process, and mindsets. From our conversations with open education practitioners worldwide, a clear theme emerged. AI tools are not consistently living up to their promises for transformative creation. Our research found that many educators have heard the promises of AI's potential to revolutionize object creation, especially by lowering those barriers to producing and adapting OER. But that potential is often unmet, at least now. And the realities of AI's impact on creation are far more complicated, especially for the practices and values by openness that sit beyond mere object creation. Many tools fail to honor attribution in ethical and reliable ways, making it difficult to maintain openness and integrity. And several educators that we spoke to worry that over reliance on AI for content generation may erode critical, confident, and creative literacies among educators and learners.
I'll add to this too, and this comes up a lot in the discussions that I have with folks. In fact, the session that I'm going to be doing next week about creativity and imagination, I'm going to talk about this more deeply, but we also see the challenges of persistent bias and discrimination. I'm seeing it being corrected slowly but surely within text, but it's still strong and prevalent in generative image tools. Undermining representation. And in my own experience, I've had moments that I've tried to do different things with AI that I found online that should have been coded as celebratory for their efficiency and for their impact. And based on the outputs, turned into ones of dejection and othering for me. And this was particularly felt in a recent attempt earlier this year to use DALL-E to generate professional headshots, and it repeatedly failed to accurately and respectfully capture my likeness as a Black woman, and actually as a interracial woman. I'm of African American, Brazilian, and Sicilian descent. The tool couldn't do that, but still felt confident that it could. And it caused a lot of harm and damage in that moment as I saw those outputs and realized that they weren't for me and there wasn't a space for me within them. If we're going to achieve that promise of AI that Josh talked about in the beginning, that we're hearing as a field, that we can do all of these things, that we can create all of these things, and particularly within open education, we have to do better. We have to do much better. On the flip side of this, and this is where I see us heading in the future, we as open ed practitioners with deep experience in co-creation and resource sharing, we can define how AI supports creativity without diminishing our human agency. AI can actually be used to extend creativity, making it possible for people who might not see themselves as creative to experiment and contribute. Josh talked about this a little bit before when he was talking about neurodivergence, and I've experienced this in a lot of realms within my work around creativity, specifically the art side of the house that I work within, where I engage with plenty of people that say, I'm not creative at all. I can't do these things. I see what you're doing. I can't do them. And it feels a lot like when we're teaching writing and we're working with learners who have blank page syndrome, not just learners, ourselves, when we don't know where to start and our confidence is a little bit shaky. I saw this in action recently at a convening that my buddy Samantha Becker, my buddy Lev Gonick, and I joined in and did with Melissa Vito at UT San Antonio, called the 100-Year Ed Tech Project. And we needed to do a pre-activity that would be creative and sort of combine digital and analog, thinking about the past, but also thinking about the future. So I felt safe within that space enough to bring my art side into the space. I've been a painter and a photographer for most of my life, and certainly for most of my career, but I don't always bring that into the ed side of the house because, you know, that's precious to me, that's mine. But I felt safe in that space for us to do a pre-activity where we would actually paint together. And I wanted us to build something with our hands that was informed by AI, but that was made by us. And I'm going to talk about this next week in greater detail and show you images of this. But I created this project called Confluence of Commands. And this project emerged from this mindset that we could use AI as a co-thinker and an idea expander, but the humans were the originators, the curators, and really the final creators of what we put together. AI gave us prompts for what we might paint, but we made the choices and we constructed the painting. AI just augmented our human creativity, but couldn't replace it. And at the end of that event, I had how many people coming up to me saying, I don't know that I'm creative. I certainly didn't feel like I did when I started, but I felt like I was creative in this moment. And that was all I needed to hear, was just that they had that moment that they realized that creativity was possible for them. It wasn't off limits or out of bounds.
And I'm typically someone who would be that person who says I'm not as creative and need some guidance for that. And so actually, I bring a similar approach with students in my information design courses, where we think of AI as a first pass reviewer, or even as a stakeholder in their communication that they're designing and developing. So I provide them prompts to have these conversations with an LLM and with other tools, so that they can think just a little more deeply about their work. And for me, this is the part of creation that is some of the hard part, is thinking deeply about the work and to have them not just meet check box, check boxes on a list, but to think more deeply, to have AI help them take it up a notch. My response to those concerned about AI being able to do coursework or do something a professional would be able to do, is particularly my response in education settings, is let's have it do that first pass to play that role, and then we can increase the output, the creative output, the validation that the professional judgment of their own, validating with the professional judgment of their own, but using AI as that first pass, as that stakeholder to increase what's possible or what they think is possible with their own creations. And so we're going to continue on for the sake of time, but for those who are watching back, we do have some questions on the screen here about where might AI risk undermining the openness, equity, or integrity of the creation process? And then where would and where could AI be used to expand creativity, helping you or others bring new ideas to life in ways that remain true to your values? And so we're not going to have time to discuss those live, but there is the open doc that folks can respond to. And thank you, Nadine, for putting that there.
All right. Well, we have our last C in front of us. Arguably, it's my favorite C. It's one of the most important C's. Although I will say, curiosity is the C that makes all of this possible. So definitely don't lose that piece. But let's close by looking at the specific challenges and opportunities for connection in the age of AI. So connection within Stuart Hall's vision speaks to the events element within our definition of culture. And in open education, connection is often so much more than what we make, but about how we gather, how we share experiences and build relationships across time, space, and communities. And it includes formal events like conferences, webinars, and workshops. And even like things like this in this moment when we go back to the intentionality of building something like MyFest, where people can truly come as they are. A lot of folks say, come and be your authentic self, but they don't think about all of the things that are necessary in order to allow somebody to come and show up and be their authentic self. But you all do quite well. You also create space for the informal interactions that strengthen our networks and deepen our sense of belonging. So those interstitial moments, those things that happen after we do something like this together, those too build our connections, especially when we're separated by time and space. Across this wide variety of points of engagement, our research revealed that AI is shifting the nature of connection as well, and often in ways that raise important questions for the future of openness. So from our global conversations with open ed practitioners, we learned that AI can both enable and erode connection. This is not surprising, but it was helpful to us to see it validated so that we could start to pick away at what might we do to do better. And in particular, while AI is often promoted for its potential to make learning more adaptive and personalized, this was actually something that Maha, you and I talked about, that these affordances that are promised for AI actually make spaces for harm, where automation replaces meaningful human to human feedback. And the promise of personalization is just regurgitating and spitting out outputs. In many cases too, AI-driven personalization can privilege certain learners while leaving others behind. Once again, reinforcing inequities that are baked into the data sets and the operations that these tools are pulling from. There's also a growing concern about AI deepening divisions within the open community itself, over who benefits, who is harmed, and where AI should have a place in our shared spaces that we hold together. These are not new challenges of power and privilege. We could replace AI with a whole lot of other terms. We've been interrogating and negotiating these challenges, but AI is amplifying these challenges that sit in front of us of answering these bigger questions that we have around power and privilege. And these deserve our attention right now more than ever.
Yes, as Angela said, the generative AI push has amplified many of those concerns, and we could say, it's the same with any digital transformation effort. If you have bad processes and poor culture, digitizing that is not going to help anyone. In fact, it's just going to sustain those inequities, and even more so with our education environments. But there are opportunities in front of us that we get to the opportunity as we're collectively building this and creating this to position AI as a support rather than a place that erodes connection. And we've long fought for constructivist and connectivist learning, and I know many of you have had those conversations ad nauseum, likely with colleagues on pushing ourselves to be um, those who make the connections, those who help learners make those connections and give that agency. And AI does present some promising ways to help with that. We found in our interviews that if used intentionally, AI could be strategically positioned to support personalization that empowers learners to take a more active role in shaping their learning paths. And so we know that when learners are in the driver's seat and AI is an assistant or has a particular role rather than the surrogate, they can build both metacognition and agency. And so we invite you watching back and live to consider, where might AI risk closing off collaboration, reducing transparency, equity, or shared ownership? And where could AI be used to strengthen human collaboration, making it more inclusive, reflective, and human-centered.
So just a heads up as we close, we've reflected on collaboration, creation, and connection. Josh and I are going to spend some time doing some homework and synthesizing the collective thinking that's been shared. I know that the chat will not be made public, but if we can have access to it, that would be great, because we're going to put some ideas together. I'm also thinking that we may put together like a Google form or something so people can submit their answers, and then we can get those into that shared worksheet and document that we will Creative Commons license for all of you. Probably a share alike non-commercial attribution license as opposed to a CC0. And we can talk about my feelings on licensing at some other juncture. But we would love to continue to identify themes and insights that stand out to all of you, and share these insights on the worksheet as a takeaway of our time together. I also want to share that that worksheet has a series of links at the bottom of it. And those link to all sorts of things, including this slide deck, including the open course that Josh and I and our colleagues created from that UNESCO IITE and Shanghai Open University commissioned research. And it also allows you to join us in a open case example database where we are collecting examples of these constellations or these constellating AI literacies and situate them within your geographic region, a moment in time, and your context within the spaces within which you work. We also have a lot of our research and publications linked on there too, if you want to dig a little deeper. I will add the Collins and Blow book to that list. I need to find out if there's an open copy of that somewhere, because everybody needs that like now. It shouldn't be dependent upon whether you have a library that has purchased it or not. So I will definitely look into that too, but just know that that worksheet is a living thing. We will keep on adding to it, and we want to welcome you warmly into that space to continue the conversation. So to close, the intersection of AI literacies and open education, just as we talked about before, it's a space of challenge for sure, but it's also a space of possibility, of opportunity. And as educators, creators, and community members, we have a unique role in defining how AI aligns with our values and sustains our cultures of openness. And it's a role that I want us to lean into, and I'm proud for us to lean into. Our research has validated that we already have strong foundations of collaboration, creation, and connection across those that commit to openness within education. But now we must ensure that these foundations guide AI adoption rather than the other way around. So with that, I just want to thank you. Shukran. I am so pleased that we got this time together today. I'm even more pleased that I get time with you all next week, and that we can continue the conversation asynchronously through all of the digital tools that we have. But I so appreciate all of you for sharing your insights, ideas, and more and questions within the conversation today. And to my dear buddy and friend, Dr. Josh Herron, I am so thankful for you and for this time that we had as well. So,
Oh, thank you. Privileged to be able to be part of this conversation, and thank you all for contributing the way that you have. That's what makes these so rich. Thank you.